There were 93 students in my high school graduating class. In our small Christian school, one of my very best friends from my childhood up became the quarterback of the football team, starting guard on the basketball team, and the catcher on the baseball team. I couldn't have even made any of those teams. He was all A's, near the top of the class, and he was considered by the girls the cutest one in the school. And they were waiting in line to see which one he would ask out next. As time has passed, I realized I have no need to envy or be jealous of my wonderful friend. He's stayed in Nashville all these years. He's become an accountant. He's doing well with his marriage and with his family. And now I recognize that he may have his trophies and awards and honors, but I have hair. He could say that he shines more than I do, and that would be true. I remember when we were growing up, he always had his birthday first in March, and I had to wait till September. That didn't seem quite fair. Do you know, last month he turned 60, and I still have a few more months to go. The theme we address today is so powerful and so fundamental for our young people and for all of us. And that is that we each have different strengths and talents and gifts and areas of influence. And we must not waste our energy comparing, competing, classifying, envying, and trying to outdo someone beside us whom God has equipped in a way that's particular to that person. Instead, you want to find your field where God has placed you and accept the assignment in His kingdom, in the work of the local church that fits what He has given you. And that sets you free from wearing yourself out with tension or unkind feelings or the desire to hurt someone else because they're doing something you wish you could do. Maybe they're faster or they're smarter or they're better looking, or maybe they've received some opportunity or promotion that you haven't. And instead of looking with that green eye, you want to look up. God has put me here. I can tell you in my life, I wouldn't trade places with my high school classmate for $1 million or anything else in the world. Because God allows me to be the preacher for the Keller Church of Christ. It's a great, great blessing to me. And as I look through the experience and opportunities that God provides, I see what Paul is talking about. Let him who boast in the Lord. Everything we have, we've been given. It's not our own doing or accomplishment or achievement. And so while these Corinthian critics were throwing stones at Paul from a distance, and in the pecking order, moving him down and themselves up as if they're superior and above him in some way, he says in effect, we're not going to engage in any of that. We won't play that game. Where God has put us, there we will thrive. Yes, there we will shine. And there we will do, to the glory of God, all that He allows us to do. It's not he who commends himself, but he whom the Lord commends, who is approved. This past week, I became aware of Alan Turing, who during World War II worked in Britain's top secret code-breaking facility, Bletchley Park. And when the German radio signals were intercepted and collated daily, there was no way to break the code. It was just so much gibberish. And this man, through his genius, he's known as the father of theoretical computer science and artificial intelligence, figured out a way to crack that code. And as a result, students of history say the war, particularly in Europe, was shortened by 2 to 4 years. One person thinking, what is my skill? What is my ability? What can I do? Instead of thinking, oh, I have to be doing what that general is doing, or what that commander, or what the person at headquarters is doing. No, I'm here, and I have a special talent that others don't share. It's a gift. And so he used it. That number you see across the top of the screen, Those were the possible code keys number. And by the way, the Germans changed it every day. This man, while we might not approve of everything in his lifestyle, we certainly would not, illustrates the point of this scripture. How could God use you? Take your eye off of him, off of her, off of them. It's not about that. It's about you and God and what he can do in your life when you accept that assignment that is special to you in the work of the local church. We want to suggest these several ideas as we look at this passage. So much in the world has to do with pitting one class against another, pigeonholing, putting one in this slot and one in another. And it leads to rivalry. It leads to screening out people who are somehow beneath, they're in a different box, or pride, or snobbery, or division. In James 2, 1-10, they would see people coming into the assembly as rich or poor and decide on the basis of that where they should sit and how much attention they should have. In India, there's the caste system. Could that be a part of our culture and our thinking, even in the Lord's church? Oh, on airline flights, you're either first class or business class or coach. Last week I heard of a guy who fell asleep in the baggage compartment of that plane. Don't want to be in that spot, do you? And so we dare not. We're not so bold as to play that game that these false leaders in Corinth are playing. We can't win. Nobody wins that game. And we don't want others to lose. It's been said that one wrapped up in himself makes a very small package. Heard George W. Bush speak in Alabama about his visit with Vladimir Putin of Russia. The Russian leader saw Barney, Mr. Bush's dog, gentle and kind, and said, "My dog is bigger, stronger, faster." Mr. Bush said, if you understood that, you understood Russia. Who's smarter, richer, prettier, funnier? Heard a story about a courtroom with a judge and all kinds of women speaking up, trying to have the first word. He stopped everybody. I can't hear you all at once. Let's just start with the woman in the room who's the oldest. From that point, there was silence. My brother and I used to tease about preachers that were so full of themselves, and he would say, "Oh, there's a preacher who's a legend in his own mind." It can be that way sometimes. We're not going to play I'm number one, because when we set ourselves alongside another person, oh, here's where I excel, and he or she not quite so effective. And so we just boost up, we fill ourselves with hot air like a balloon ready to pop. We do much better to acknowledge our own weaknesses, don't we? To note that God is strong. He is perfect. He is without sin. He is able to save. And you and I are not. That way we avoid conceit, the devil's snare. History tells of a statue that was erected to celebrate the victory of the Grecian games. It made the rivals of the winners so envious and so hateful that one of them sneaked out at night to topple the statue of his enemy. It was so heavy, he had to put quite an effort into rocking it back and forth. When he finally got it to topple, it fell the wrong way and crushed him to death. That's what envy does. In John 21, 18-23, when Simon Peter learned that his future would involve stretching out his hands and being taken where he didn't want to go, he looked at the disciple that Jesus loved and asked, "What about him?" Elizabeth O'Connor said, "Envy is a symptom of a lack of appreciation for our own uniqueness and self-worth. Each of us has something to give that no one else has." Envy and insecurity both go together. They both are rooted in comparison. Who is greatest in the kingdom? Who gets to sit on the right or the left of the master? I was in college. My sport was ping pong. How about you? And there's a tall gentleman from Nigeria. I'll never forget it. His name was Lawrence Lawrence, you met him. And he was powerful with a paddle. You know, in ping pong, sometimes you are the paddle and sometimes you're the ball. When I played Lawrence of Nigeria, almost always I was the ball. I enjoy ping pong as a game, but not as a war. I remember coming away from the table exhausted, frustrated, defeated, and sometimes angry. I did much better when I could support a gift that he had, a strength that was his, than to worry about something I could not accomplish as easily. When we envy each other, everyone loses. Only the devil wins. If I think that to be first, I have to make someone else last, I become suspicious and threatened and insecure. What a concept of Jesus, that it's the last who'll be first. What do all these have in common? Eve, Cain, Joseph's brothers, Aaron and Miriam, Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, Achan, King David, King Ahab, the workers in the vineyard, the Sanhedrin, and on and on. They all looked at someone else and said, unless I can have that, do that, be that, I'm not going to be successful. The result of envy is gossip, dishonesty, deception. I become consumed, and the devil rejoices because he has his hold on me. The word sphere, I think as Will read, it was translated area of influence, has to do with the idea that there's a spot in which God can use you to the greatest extent. In everyday language, we used to say, bloom where you're planted. Don't think that the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. You think, how could this grass be greener if I do what I am here to do? So much is lost when we waste our strength worrying about other people, looking at, looking down on those beside us. Someone said that the person who is helping one beneath him has no time to envy the one above him. That reminds me, when we lived in Alabama, there was a man in the congregation who volunteered to mow a cemetery in his neighborhood. He said, you know, I have 20 people under me and they never complain. We will not boast in self, but in the Lord. We will seek His approval alone. At the end of the day, it's not how did you do when put next to this person or that person, but rather, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joys of your master. We won't claim credit for the work of others. We won't be threatened by their accomplishments. We will never be happy if they fail. God gave them different tasks from ours. We'll be secure in our own field and freely help others prosper in theirs. Because God's goal is that we all cross the finish line, having accepted His unique assignments for each person, worked with what we had, made the best of what He's given us, not concentrating on others, realizing that someone else's best may be better than mine in some area or another, and rejoicing and assisting and preparing to do what God would have me do without excuses, without envy, and without anger. It was never about you. It was never about them. It was never about you and them. It's always about you and God. The Corinthians apparently were taking these shots at Paul. They were boasting. They were undermining him. They were classifying, putting themselves at the top, comparing side by side, thinking that through force, through selfishness, and through pride, they could make the greatest difference. Paul shows us by inspiration that the way to serve the God of heaven is to say, I'm going to be in the spot where He's put me, give it all I have, and one day hear His gracious welcome. I want to ask Greg Wilson to make his way on up here, if he would, at this time. We look forward to hearing an update about something so near and dear to the heart of God, and that is the mission effort in which we're involved throughout the world. We find our place when we together recognize the common foe, the common goal, the common objective, and that is to take the gospel into all the world. And we appreciate Greg as one of many who has accepted an assignment that God has given him here. Look forward to hearing from him, brother.
Thank you, brother. Well, I came here today, and it's a perfect segue from Corey's lesson, which he always does a great job.
Because I'm not really here to talk about me, but I'm here to talk about you and what your generosity has allowed this congregation to do in the Lord's field. We've been so blessed because of your generosity and all the things that we've been able to do. I want to thank you so much. When we, on Mission Sunday last year, Richard Lawrence brought me the card, and he looked at me kind of with a really sad face and said, "Here you go." I said, "Oh my goodness, what am I going to do now?" And I looked at it, and we were $30,000 above our budget. I think our budget was $110,000, and we raised $140,705.49. That was the total funds given in pledges. And thank you so much for entrusting us with these funds to do the Lord's work here at Keller. I know I stand before you, but we have 4 families that work hard to make sure these funds are spent in a way that will glorify the Lord, grow His kingdom. We have myself and my wife Tanya, you have the Legats, you have the Smiths, and you have the Hammonds. And a lot of time, effort, prayer is spent thinking about the things that we would like to do that would allow the work to continue to grow. And we want to thank everyone who's made pledges. We want to thank those that are still fulfilling their 2015 pledges. And if there's others who didn't have the opportunity to give before would like to do, we would encourage you to do so. If you have questions about how much of your pledges you've given, just call the church office and they'll be more than happy to help you with that. As I look upon the work that we've been blessed to be embarked upon, one of the scriptures that I really look at and lean on is 2 Timothy 2. The things which you've heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. As many of you know, our mission work focuses on preacher training. And what I'd like to do today is to talk about a lot of the works that we've been able to do. The works that we've been doing for a number of years, the Baxter Institute, Mission Printing, our work in Civic Singapore, working with Ben Little in South Africa, and Cy Stafford in Tanzania. But we were also able to take on some additional works because of your generosity above and beyond. The work at HCU, Heritage Christian University, Kuna Bible School, Southern African Bible College. And so we've been so very blessed with what we've been able to do. And I think about what Corey said and us not being able to boast, and we have no place to do so. It's all because of the generosity that God has placed into you to freely give so that His word can spread, not only here in Keller, but throughout the world. First, I want to start off talking about the Baxter Institute. It is located I almost had it, Kim, you jinxed me. She laughs at me because I always mispronounce it. Tegucigalpa, Honduras. That is a work we've been blessed to be involved in for a number of years. And because of your generosity, we were able to expand. Previously, we supported one couple, and now we support a couple and additional student. And that was the first time we were able to do that was this year because of the additional funds that we received. For those who are not familiar with it, it's a preacher training school that's located in Honduras. I've never been there, but I've been told it's a beautiful location. They have dorms that will accommodate 70 men or single men, and they've got married couples can also attend in the separate set of dorms. They've been providing preacher training for over 50 years. They started out in Mexico and they transitioned over into Honduras. And over 500 men and women have come from that university who've been thoroughly equipped with God's Word, and they're now working in this field. The next work I'd like to talk about is mission praying. It's one that I've forgotten once or twice, and I've been reminded promptly when I have. But it is a great work, and someone mentioned it earlier. About 6 years ago, we have volunteers here who meet in room 33 over the Family Life Center. They come to correlate and staple mission praying booklets that are sent out worldwide. It's a great effort. We would encourage anyone who has the time to come and participate. Over 600,000 packets, and from what I understand, booklets, from what I understand, they're rapidly approaching 700,000, have been collated and is used. And so it's a great work, and it's one that we've supported for a very long time and look forward to continue to do. Singapore, we have Brandon and Penny Kendall in Singapore. They're with Sunset Bible School in Singapore. They're approaching the 5-year period. They work in that country because they're in a place where you can't go into China or Myanmar or Indonesia really and do a preacher training school. So they bring men out of those areas and train them in Singapore and then send them back to their home country where they can spread the gospel. You'll find it to be a thing with a lot of our work because it always seems to be the men who are preaching and teaching in their own land and their own language seem to be so much more effective than we are. That is not to take away from the desire, the zeal for Americans to go labor in those fields, but we can equip local men to work in their area. Things seem to work so much better, and the work seems to be so much more fruitful. And so that's one of the things that we always like to try to do. With Randy, they're actually about to graduate on May 3rd. They have a class of 6 men who will be graduating, and their upcoming class, they will have 14 people, which will be their largest class. So we're very blessed with the work that they're able to do there. And then we have our brother, Benedict Little. He has to be the hardest working man in South Africa. You guys have heard him speak the enthusiasm that he's doing, the enthusiasm that he has, and the work that he's doing. He probably has the longest reports during our mission committee meetings. They're several pages long with all of the things that he's embarked in, and we're truly blessed to partner with him. He travels all over South Africa in evangelistic efforts, speaking. He's on the advisory board at South African Bible School, and he gets tons of opportunities to go out, preach, share the gospel, and bring men into Christ. Our most recent work is one in Tanzania, Brother Cy Stafford, and you guys heard him speak not long ago. You wouldn't think a man who's been in the gospel as long as he has would be that on fire, but he is. And just speaking with him, he's such a great encouragement. From the first time I met him, and we were blessed to have Brother Eric Chambers introduce us to him, and he's been a true joy to work with. And we started working with him last year, and that's another example of, because of the additional funds that we were provided, we were able to increase the number of students there. We support from 3 preachers to 6 preachers this year. Again, thank you so very much for what you've enabled us to do by your generosity. Next, we have Heritage Christian University. That's a work that we started. This is one that we do, that we were able to do purely because of the funds that you gave. We were able to participate last year, and we were able to work this year. At Heritage Christian University, we fund what's known as a legacy scholarship. One of the problems that you have is students who come from school, they end up with a lot of student debt. which hurts them if they want to stay in ministry. And sometimes many have to consider going into a secular job. And so one of the things we wanted to do was provide funding for them so they could go through school per year without having additional debt for student loans. And so we found one legacy scholarship, as it's referred to there, so they don't have to take on additional debt. Also, we were able to start work with Kuna Bible College. Brother Mike Brooks out of Alabama. It's a gentleman, Brother Corey introduced us to. And that's a school that they have in Bangladesh. And actually talked to him last week. He went there in March, and there was some turmoil in the country. He stayed there a couple of days and had to come back home. So these men and women work in very, very difficult areas. If you were here earlier, you heard Brother George talk about in Asia where some of the challenges that they have that we don't have. I don't think any of us have ever faced, other than someone slamming the door in our face telling us to get off their property, anyone threatening our lives for the sake of the gospel. But that's indeed the type of environment some of our missionaries work in. And so we're blessed that we have men that are willing to go to those countries and take on those work and face that persecution, all for the glory of God. Finally, we have South African Bible College. We've previously worked with Benedict, who's administrator there, but I'll harp on it again. Because of your generosity, for this year, we were able to sponsor a student there for Bible school. South African Bible College is a great university. They've been around also for about 50 years. And many men have gone out from that school, operating in Africa, spreading the gospel, and continue to grow and groom other preachers. One of the programs that Brother Ben has there is he has an internship program that for people who graduated and just provide them funds until they're able to find a local congregation to work in, because many of the congregations there don't have the funds that we have in order to pay a preacher a living wage. And so he also funds the incidentals for them so they can remain in ministry. I know I've covered a lot, but I think it's important for you guys to realize that we've been so blessed by your generosity, and we've in turn been able to bless other missionaries and others who work and labor in the field to do the Lord's will. And it's all because of your efforts and what you've been able to do, what you've allowed us to do by your generous funding. I know some of you might think I'm not making a fashion statement with a sandal on one foot and a shoe on the other. I had an ingrown toenail removed, probably too much more information you wanted to know, but that's the reason why you see the mismatched shoes. My sight's not failing, so just want to make sure everyone understands. And so, once again, I want to thank you for your generosity. Thank you for the support that you've given the committee. We ask you that you continue to pray for us and with us as we look at other works that we can be involved in. And God is glorified through your efforts and through what you've allowed us to do. If there's anyone who have heard the things that has been discussed today and realized that you need to put on Christ, and you need to enter that water grave of baptism, we'd like to make that invitation to you. If you're a member of the Lord's Church and you realize you haven't lived as you should, and you'd like to come forward to seek prayer, we encourage you to come forward as we stand and sing.